Hello, fellow citizens! I am your host, Jess, and this is your reminder that the weight of the entire world is not on your shoulders, and you can make a difference. This podcast is about what it means to be a citizen and neighbor where you live. For me, that's Philadelphia. There are lots of ways to be a citizen and a neighbor, and I want to cover all of them in this podcast, starting with the belief that citizens should be informed. Because of our current nationwide agenda, I'm kicking off the podcast by examining the candidates and roles on the 2020 general election ballot. Today I'm talking to my, I like to refer to her as my unofficial dog manager, because she's just brought so many puppies into my life. My favorite one being Leo. Hi, Leo. Today I'm talking to my good friend Ashley. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, Jess.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. You were like super chill about it, and so I'm really excited. I know we're also even going to talk about the voting early process. You've already gone through that. Oh my God. I'm so happy to know you.
Yes, well, thanks for asking me to do this. I think it's super important with everything kind of, going on in the world right now. So I think it's great that you're trying to just educate people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the easiest thing is we can just like talk to each other about it. Because I also feel like you kind of trust your friends' opinions or the way that they express their knowledge better than you do a faceless report.
I think so, especially in today's day and age. I think we like heavily rely on talking with like our friends and like our coworkers and peers. Like, I think it's definitely an easier conversation to have.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. So I'm excited to tell all of our listeners a little bit about you before we dive into our ballot question. Ashley, where all have you lived?
So I was born and raised and have lived my entire life in the state of Pennsylvania.
Wow. And
So I
PA
pretty
is
much,
huge.
yeah. So I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of like Philadelphia. So about like 40 minutes outside of the city. So, I've grown up coming into the city and, my aunt and grandmother lived in the city and my cousins and stuff. So I spent like a lot of time in Philadelphia growing up as a kid.
Do you think back to that time and like what you see today? Do you see a vast different like visual look of the city?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's still times when I'm driving through the city and I remember when this building definitely wasn't here previously. Like a lot of housing, especially with how quickly housing is going up in, Philadelphia. I just remember, just it's just fields and like parks and like emptiness and stuff. And it's just being built up so quickly now.
Can you think of anything you recognize from your childhood that's still here?
I mean, pretty much when I was a kid, we used to just take 309 to Broad Street to come directly into the city because we used to go to Chinatown every weekend. So, I mean, it's pretty much still an iconic drive for me coming up like Broad Street and stuff and seeing City Hall and all the skyscrapers. And, that hasn't like changed at all. Broad Street has. I mean, it's definitely got more built up. When you're coming up Broad Street, you drive through Temple. Temple's been built up over the years. So usually at any time that I do take that route, it's always interesting to kind of see like what places I remember from like childhood, like drives and stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, I think it looks generally the same.
Yeah. So speaking of driving, we're not doing as much driving these days because we're in a pandemic. People are working from home. So how would you say you're spending your time these days?
I mean, yeah, even before the pandemic, I mean, I really didn't drive a lot because I worked in Center City. So I would just, walk to the subway. I'd take public transportation, which was really convenient. So, then not having to commute at all, like I really don't drive anywhere besides, going to the grocery store maybe. But I mean, pretty much baking and eating my way through quarantine is exactly what I did.
Get that
I
quarantine
learned
15.
Yeah, I learned how to make quite a few of my favorite dishes on my own during quarantine.
What kinds?
Mostly Korean barbecue.
Oh my God.
We have a tray and everything now, so it's super legit. But I mean, that was the thing that I really missed about, um, during the lockdown and quarantine was going out to eat because Philadelphia is such a great food city. We have everything at our fingertips, which is super dangerous.
Yeah. We saved a lot of money in the beginning.
We definitely did too, because we didn't eat out for like a while because we didn't know what was really going on with everything. But then, I mean, probably the first like month and a half we didn't eat out at all, and it was just like kind of crazy because really the longest stretch that I've never eaten out. I
Yeah.
love food. You know me, I
Yes.
love eating.
Yeah. That's so awesome that you just are like, I'm going to do it myself and you finding your happiness.
Yeah.
So something that doesn't always bring people happiness is voting. How long have you been voting, Ashley?
Since 2008.
Oh my gosh. Do you mind telling our listeners how old you are?
32, 3.
It's really quarantine time if you don't remember how old you are.
I mean, pretty much after 30, I like stopped counting, right?
30s, whatever. Yeah, I just feel like 2008 was forever ago. Oh my God, the year's 2020.
It is. I mean, it's crazy to think about how many
It's
people I know from back then. I've known your husband for that long.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, longer, but yeah.
Oh my God. So like we said before, you already cast your ballot. Would you say that you're informed on a local level?
About like the candidates and like what's going on.
Yeah, like when you saw the names on the ballot, did any of them really like, oh yeah, I know that person?
Yeah, definitely a couple rang some bells, but not everyone on there.
Yeah. So then as far as that or like researching for today, how much time do you think you put into the ballot?
Probably like 30 to 60 minutes, I'd say, like researching like the questions and some of the candidates that I maybe didn't know. But I think there was just a lot of really good information out there that made it really easy to kind of get all that information. Just like a quick Google of like, PA ballot questions brings up a lot of, local, news websites and that type of stuff. And it's, your one-stop guide to like everything you need to know that's on the ballot. So I think the advantage in 2020 is that we have all of that at our fingertips so quickly.
And do you have a usual source that you go to for news?
I mean, typically in the mornings we'll watch, Good Day Philadelphia. Sometimes we'll turn on the local news at night, depending on, how late I'm working. I don't always catch it. But Billy Penn is a good website. And I follow a lot of like Philadelphia related like Instagram accounts and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I feel like I'm only just now finding out about Billy Penn, which says a lot about my own research, but yeah, I
yeah,
like
they're
that.
always a good one. Yeah.
Good Day Philadelphia to me is so bonkers. Like morning news in general for me is so hard because a lot of it is commercials first off. And then when they are actually on air, it's unless they're talking about like stuff happening around the city, like that stuff I'll pay attention to. And then they just talk nonsense. And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, so I guess Good Day Philadelphia sort of holds a dear place in my heart because my coworker went viral and they came to our office.
Yeah, tell us more
Uh,
about that.
so my coworker is Reddit famous for some uh oh my gosh, it's like cottage cheese. So she's had it since I think like 2012 or something. And every year she takes
Oh.
a photo with it on like the expiration date. And it, had traveled with us from office to office essentially. But Mike Jarek, came to our office and checked it out. It was pretty hilarious. Honestly, I couldn't believe it was happening.
That's awesome. Yeah, Mike Jarek from Good Day Philadelphia, local celeb. Verges on a little bit creepy, but
And then my old office used to be in Old City, so it was right by their studios. So yeah, they're quirky, but that's Philadelphia, isn't it?
yeah, I think they're a great representation of Philly. Well, good. I'm glad we're in a good mood to talk about this. Now, this one isn't this ballot question. It's not that big a deal. It's not very deep. We're talking about money. So I'm going to read the ballot question, and then Ashley will tell us a little bit about her research. So ballot question number 4 says, should the city of Philadelphia borrow $134 million to be spent for and toward capital purposes as follows? Transit, $4.869 million. Streets and sanitation, $47.641 million. Municipal buildings, $62.633 million. Parks, recreation, and museums, $6.843 million, and economic and community development, $12.014 million. That is what we are voting on today. Well, not necessarily today. What are your thoughts, Ashley?
I mean, I voted yes just because I think, especially in 2020, I think a lot of people during the pandemic, this sort of an eye opener on just how, especially for, streets and sanitation, Philadelphia recycling was bi-weekly for us for like 3 or 4 months, I think it was, and trash was delayed. It was just a struggle. I mean, there's not enough, and just I know you walk dogs near like the park by my house. There's always the trash cans are always overfilling. There's not a lot of trash cans as go through the city. There's just trash strewn everywhere. I think, putting money into these types of things will definitely help make Philadelphia just a better place overall. Though those programs are struggling. There was a really good Instagram account, Ya Fave Trash Man on Instagram. He kind of went almost viral. Pretty, he's got a lot of followers and everything, but he was really just sort of like highlighting what it was like out there for people who are working the streets and sanitation. They didn't have PPE at a time where it was just terrifying. Like, we just saw how crazy it was with the trash and recycling being every other week. Like, it was a lot. And I think the pandemic also just sort of opened my eyes, and hopefully a lot of people, is just to have more patience with stuff like that. Yeah, it definitely sucked. Like, it sucked. It smelled, it was hot, there was trash everywhere. We had a lot of bad weather, but I mean, they were there on the front lines, taking care of us as, taking what they could. It's really hard. But following that account definitely kind of opened my eyes as well, just kind of seeing like, man, he's out there, raising funds and stuff for PPE, for the sanitation department, and, trying to fight for, frontline pay. It's definitely hard. It's not a job that I would want to do.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, if they are not supplying them with the proper PPE, and if you've ever seen a trash truck in action, you have a driver and 2 guys that are actually getting the trash, and they are in that little front seat, squished together, breathing in the same air for, I don't even know how many hours they work, based on their routes. And because they weren't prepared early on, people were getting sick early on. and you need
calling out.
Right, and you need 3 people per truck to do this, and so if you don't have the staff, then you don't have the trucks to be sent out, and so it was a weird summer with so much trash and so much recycling, and we're getting all these, because like we're signed up for different resources of information saying like, okay, this week we're doing trash. Okay, next week it's a day later for recycle. I couldn't keep track of it eventually.
You and I texted. We were like, I'm just gonna put it out. Maybe it'll come. I don't know. Just we'll see.
It has been bonkers.
It was a tough game for a little bit, like, and then you're like, all right, shoot, they did, I thought I was a day behind, and like I can hear them, so I'm like rushing to put my stuff out. It was like it was a mad summer with all of that going on.
Yeah, it was weird to walk the dogs when there was so much trash on the sidewalks, because
it was
Philly's sidewalks, especially when you're going down one-way streets, are super narrow to begin with, and then so if I'm trying to navigate these dogs around the trash, half the time I just have to like walk them in the street, because otherwise they're gonna like sniff everything. And even without that, we have so many chicken bones on the street. So then you add people's just household trash everywhere, sitting out there for like a good week, because people are like, oh, it's not coming today. Well, I'm just going to leave it out there for another week.
And it's like 90 degrees out. So then it starts to smell and then rot. And it was just not a great time in the city.
It was not good. Yeah, there's a lot to think about with this question. Because like you said, it's been on the ballot before.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, like, you got it, especially with everything with like going on, like parks, recreation museums, everyone's struggling right now. Transit, all of that. Philadelphia was I loved living and working in Philly and being able to take public transportation. Those are the things that I miss right now, is, being able to just walk to the subway, catch a, Flyers game, catch a Phillies game, Eagles game, go tailgate, all of that stuff, go to concerts. Philadelphia is a accessible city. You can get, anywhere using public transportation, whether it's the subway or the bus, regional rail. So those are like the things that I'm really missing right now.
I don't remember the last time I took public transit, because I don't even think I did it in February, maybe like January. The last time might have been when we went to the Eagles game, like last year in October. I don't know.
I know, time just blends together at this point.
I'm gonna link in this episode description. I just listened to a really great WHYY podcast episode, which I just like got hooked onto them. They're like somehow associated with Billy Penn. And they were talking about SEPTA overtime right now, even though we're not, like, nobody's using the transits. And so like, why is there all this overtime being paid? Who is it being paid to? But they did mention that they have a lot of people working on keeping the subway cars, especially, might have been trains too, but just maintaining them, fixing everything up. But even those people were getting overtime. And so there was this question of like, well, if you're working like more than 10 hours a day, are you like working that whole time? And like, what does that say about these train cars? Like, how many train cars were this bad while people were riding them on the regular?
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully $4.869 million goes a long way for transit.
Hopefully. I mean, there's just so much that the city could use. I mean, just thinking about...
I'm curious about the Parks, Recs, and Museum money, because they've been doing a lot of park work lately for new parks, like restoring parks, like redesigning them and stuff, which I'm excited about.
They did that at Wharton Square Park. So actually previously I believe it was a drainage project that they did, but previous to this, before this project, anytime it rained super, super hard, our basement actually used to flood.
Right.
And then after they completed this project, knock on wood, our basement hasn't flooded. It fixed like the issues.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
whatever they did, definitely worked. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, we used to we'd have to like go check on the basement when it rains, and now I don't even have to think about it.
Right.
Like I
That's
said, I'm not 100.
awesome.
I believe it was like a drainage project that they did. But yeah, so I mean, like that, and just especially with people, during lockdown, I mean, we walk the dogs over there a lot. There's tennis courts over there. No one ever
Mhm.
used them before. Now you're seeing like people, there's lines
There,
like
yes.
waiting. There's people playing like volleyball in the park, like
It's
all
awesome.
sorts of, people are doing all sorts of things in the parks now. It's the only place they can, be. We're seeing like picnics and that type of stuff. So, you know, just getting, I know there's a lot of volunteers and stuff who will clean the parks, and usually on like day of services, they have, high school kids or maybe college kids come do it. I've seen just people around the neighborhood doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, our block does, block cleanup on our street like every few months or so, where we just, pick a day and time and go out and just sort of just, pick up any trash, all that type of stuff, and just try and tidy up the block.
Yeah, that's almost why I've kind of like really cut down on like bitching about the trash, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to complain about it because I could just clean it. I just today I didn't do it. But so yeah, when it comes to like the parks, I don't consider the money going towards like the trash cleanup as much, because I'm like, well, we could just do that ourselves. Like, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, I would assume it must be for like things such as like drainage and I don't know, like you said, maybe like restoring that type of stuff, like upkeep for the, tennis courts and
Mm-hmm.
museums and, that type of thing.
Probably mowing the lawn too.
Mhm.
They just revamped at, I want to say it's 12th and Wharton. It used to be called Columbus Park, and they totally like tore the whole thing up in like February or maybe beginning of March. And they're almost done like revamping the whole thing. It used to have a baseball field, a lot of greenery that people used for soccer, a children's playground, and a dog park. They're keeping all those same things. They're just kind of like beautifying it, but
Okay.
they renamed it Pass Young Park now. I think because they just took down the Columbus statue. I thought that was really interesting.
Probably for the best, but
Yeah. So I'm anxious for that one to open, because that one is like semi close to where I am, and I just like seeing the dogs play together.
yes. That'll be really nice once it opens.
Yeah. I'm curious like what the money does for the museums. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, in the past, I used to always vote no on this because I know that there's a debt. And so the debt right now is $5.5 billion to be paid off by 2047. Um, the number they're asking for on this ballot is lower than it's been in the past. It used to be like 180. This year, they're saying that what they're asking for, what did we say, 134, is only 3% of the city's
Of the
annual budget.
I think in 2000, the last round, 2018, I mean, the numbers, so for transit it was about the same. It was 5 million for transit, and it's 4.869 million this year. It was 37 million for streets and sanitation.
Mm.
So that's gone up. It was 98 million for municipal buildings.
Huh? Do you think
That's
they used that to revamp Dilworth Park? Like, what would that count as?
I think so.
And Love
Probably
Park?
that. Yeah, I mean, they completely redid that.
Are those considered parks or
Um,
municipal? Who
I
knows?
bel I think it's municipal.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I mean, it's just sort of interesting to see kind of the difference. And it was like 26.6 for parks, recreation, and museums, and
What?
it's now 6. Yeah, so some pretty interesting, drastic changes.
Well, that would explain why they got so much done then. Wow. All right, let's see what they can do with 6 million. So the only thing, like, I was gonna vote no again, which now I'm totally rethinking it. Like, you make some really great points. One, because I'm like, well, when do we decide that we're gonna start paying this debt back? Because I always kind of like, not always, I shouldn't say that. Only recently, I'm like, we gotta start thinking about like future generations and what they're gonna have to do, because that's kind of how we got into this whole climate change mess.
Yep.
But then they're like, well, this is only 3% of the budget. So I'm like, well, then are we going to be okay without that 3%? And if we don't get the 3%, can we reallocate some funds from maybe, people are like, let's defund the police. So maybe we take 3% of theirs, which would be about $21 million.
I mean, I know you don't drive often, but like one knows just walking around Philadelphia, our streets are
That's true.
terrible. Terrible. They're finally
Yeah.
starting to pave around our area right now, and they're almost done. And it's just like crazy because like our streets are terrible.
Yeah.
Potholes. Like, I don't think you're a true Philadelphian until you bottomed out your car
Yeah.
from a pothole.
That's a
It's
really
just
good
crazy.
point. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, that's my only conflicting thing is like, if we don't vote yes, will they take it from somewhere else? I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it. I'm just like, let's just take it from somewhere else. I tried to like find a breakdown of what happened to the previous money. Philly doesn't have a really good transparent treasury website.
They do not.
Not
I
at
also
all.
tried to look into that just because I was curious. Because when it
Um,
gets approved, it doesn't always happen like immediately. It could be like, so like,
maybe like
I
2
don't,
years.
yeah, so has it even happened yet? I don't know.
I found a 5-year plan that was just recently revised, so I'll put that in the episode description because I think that's just like interesting, because then if you read that, you can kind of like sort of hold people accountable and be like, well, this is what you said you were going to do, and your plan says like this is why you were going to do it.
I wish Philadelphia was transparent about that. I think just in general, I think all governments should just be transparent about where your tax money is going, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
It's funny because when I was looking at like the statewide stuff, they were like, oh, states get graded on their transparency, but I didn't see anything about cities, and I was trying to just like look up this number real fast, and that was not happening. I just want to read this like one paragraph from that report for the new fiscal year. This is from the Mayor Kenny. He says, we face an economic downturn that will equal and probably exceed the worst of the Great Recession of 2008 and has created almost $650 million hole in our fiscal year 2021 budget. So even as our operational departments rushed to respond to the virus, I directed our financial and budget directors to create a drastically revised spending plan in the wake of the pandemic and resulting economic downturn. So yeah, a lot of money changed this year, like right away, to try to figure stuff out. So yeah, I think that's something to consider when voting on this one, is like, well, we kind of got to make up for some things that happened this year. We'll see. I mean, we won't see for like a couple of years, but
yeah, right. But maybe one day they'll be more transparent about it. That would be great. But
yeah, and at least like you and I like looked some stuff up now. So now the next time we hear stuff about those particular departments, maybe then it'll be easier. Like if we read articles about like transit, we'll be like, oh, did they get the money that we voted on? Or like, what money are they getting?
yeah, I'm like curious because like I know the Please Touch Museum is, shut down until 2021 at
Yeah.
the earliest, but like what part of like I'm just so curious for, I have obviously just a soft spot for the arts and everything. So like I'm a strong, I think that they should have art and like things in school and which I think often is like the first thing to be defunded is like the arts and the music program. But like, I think these just museums in general, I just feel bad for just thinking about Philadelphia, like all these, police tech museum. I'm sure the art museum struggling. There's, so many museums in Philadelphia that have great history. Like, what's going to happen to all of them?
Right. We're known as a tourist city. And so we have to keep up what the tourists are coming for, which is also like, so maybe that some of the tourist money should fund these things. I don't know how financing works. I don't know who's getting what money, but if they're asking us if we want to borrow this money, I need to know more, Ashley. It doesn't matter. It's just one yes or no question. I don't know.
But I mean, yeah, I think it's like I said, there's definitely a lot of, I'm sure, as with anything, pros and cons to it. But I'm just, I think, like I said, the pandemic definitely opened like your people's eyes to like just some of this in general. So
yeah, for sure. I know I took Theodore to a water park. It's called the Sister City Playground or Sister City Park. And it's right next to Logan's Circle or they call it Logan Square. It's a circle. And they had a lot of them, they were open and they call them spray grounds instead of a playground because it's got water. And we had gone there the year before. And so we went this year. It was like an early afternoon. There was a whole list of parks that were playgrounds that were still open. They just had a lot of like the hand sanitizer and they were like, please like keep your distance and that kind of stuff. When we went, there really were like hardly any kids there. There was like maybe 10 kids. And it was just like my nephew who came with my sister and I. And so it wasn't like him and a group of friends or anything. And he's pretty good at like playing by himself. He actually gets like territorial and he's like, I want this whole pond to myself. Like, why are there other kids in the water? And I'm like, because it's a park, like this is a public space. But I was just really glad, like the playgrounds, the parks, those kind of committees, they were doing their part. Like they knew, they're like, this is hard for kids to get used to. I think a lot of kids have been doing a really great job with this pandemic because I think that kids often do what they're told because they don't know what the world is. Like you have to guide a kid through the world. And so I've seen a lot of kids wearing masks and I think that's awesome that they're adapting really well. I don't know anybody doing the homeschooling. I'm sure that's like kind of scary. But to everybody, I just hope they have all the strength they can muster.
I know. Seriously.
It's October and we're still going through this. Oh, Halloween. I saw a sign the other day on a block that said we're not doing Halloween this year. The whole block was like, we're not doing Halloween. I was like, no. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know I'm coming to the puppy parade.
I was going to say, well, our block is doing a dog parade. So a socially distanced one.
I'm so excited. I have to get my costume. So it'll be great.
It's going to be awesome. I'm very excited.
I think we're done with this question, Ashley. Should we like encourage people to vote yes, or it's just like figure it out based on what we said? I don't know.
I would encourage people to vote yes on that, but obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinions. But I think, just making sure you think that through, like if the city were to be more transparent about it, I think maybe more people would vote yes. But I think just taking a little bit of time to like read the question and think about it, like that's all you really have to do, I think.
That's a great point. So speaking about voting, you voted.
Yes, we went to one of the satellite locations approved by the city. We went to the one on Broad Street. It was super easy. So we actually had decided we wanted my boyfriend and I decided, we had talked about it. We were like, we should probably vote in person. Not because we don't trust the USPS, but because I don't trust the man to mess with that. So it was more so a decision where I was like, all right, need to vote in person. So these satellite centers are sort of like a great like in between where we went, requested our mail-in ballots on the spot. They print it, get it to you, and then you fill it out. And they have these little it's very efficient. It's a whole efficient system. So you can either, if you go and you have already requested your mail-in ballot, you just drop it in the little cart thing. And then if you haven't requested your ballot, you go in, they do it for you on the spot. And then they have these little privacy booths in a room that's, socially distanced where you just fill out the ballot, and then you put it in the envelopes, and then you just drop it back in it's like a little cart thing that they have for all the ballots.
Oh, that is so nice. And you got a sticker?
You got a sticker. I think the whole process honestly took like 30 minutes, if that.
What day of the week and what time did you go? Because I'm going on Monday.
We went on a Wednesday. I left work at we left at 4 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So, and then we got there, parked, and then we were pretty much done by 5.
Wow, that's awesome. I would have thought that was going to be a really hectic time, so I feel a lot better now.
Yeah, like I said, we went at 4, so it was a little bit maybe earlier. I think when we walked out, there was a couple people in line, maybe just coming from work or whatever. But they're open, I believe, until 6 o'clock. So
sweet. I'm excited about it. I'm gonna get my sticker. I'm going with a friend, and so we're both gonna be buddies, because otherwise I think I would be anxious, so anxious.
Did you already request your mail-in ballot?
Yeah, I have it. It's on my fridge.
Cool, yeah.
I've slowly been filling it out as I do my research. This was the last research I had to do. So after this, I'm officially finishing my ballot. I'm really excited. This is the first year that I feel really knowledgeable about my ballot, and I'm proud. So I earned my sticker.
Yes. Like I said, it was super easy. I think I didn't take too much time to research it, but I feel pretty informed. And I think, like I said, in today's day and age, you can just literally Google it, and there's one-stop websites where it just tells you everything. So
yeah, we live in an amazing time. There's just access to so much information. I feel you had more of a reason 15 or 20 years ago to just vote without any knowledge. There's no excuse today if you want to.
Exactly.
So you did your citizen duty of voting, and how are you being neighborly these days?
So pretty much, I mean, honestly, our block has always been pretty friendly. You see your neighbors, you say hi, chit chat, small talk, that type of thing. But I think honestly, the pandemic and lockdown, ended up being a good thing. In some ways, we ended up becoming pretty close with a lot of our neighbors. There's probably maybe 20 of us on the block now, if not more. But during quarantine, we weren't allowed to go anywhere. So we just sort of as it got warmer out, during the day or early in the afternoon, you just sort of just sit on your stoop and just, everyone has dogs, so they're walking their dogs, and, you stop to chit chat, and then you have stoop happy hours is what it turns into. And now we have, we still do stoop happy hours. We have a neighborhood, group chat. So if you're expecting a package and you're not home or something, it's super convenient. Like I said, there's probably 20, 25 of us in this group chat or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's through a third party messaging app, so my text messages aren't blowing up. But it's a very convenient way to keep in touch with our neighbors. If there's someone's getting a delivery, because we live on a really small side street, it's hey, just a heads up, someone had to get like a tree removed or something from their backyard. So like the tree removers were like blocking the street. So it's been really great getting to like know our neighbors. Our block is, just been a lot of fun. Doing these stoop happy hours. Recently, I know you were talking with my boyfriend earlier about this, but he's been involved with like the Wharton Square Park community center and stuff, and he got to talking with them to see if there was anything we could like do to help out or whatever. And the one guy had told us, they a bunch of people on like one of the Facebook pages for like the neighborhood, they all pulled together and like donated like a really nice printer to it, because it is like like a access center for kids in the city. Doesn't cost them like anything. They just have to like register. So we ended up, I think like the schools probably provide the meals, but we just went to collected about like $250 from like our neighbors. I just like sent a group message out saying like, hey, we're gonna go to BJ's and like get like snacks to donate like to the kids if anyone wants to like chip in, or if they have anything, you guys want to go grab stuff on your own and like donate it. And pretty much just was like boom, instant. And people were like, yeah, I'll like I said, we raised the money pretty quickly. And then we just went to BJ's and bought a whole ton of stuff for them. So
that is so awesome. Yeah, I think like if you ask people like, do you want to donate to some kids? Like what person's going to be like, no.
Yeah.
I love it. And like the funny thing is, to me, Ashley, I feel like you're like a silent, like great citizen. Like you don't boast about it. You're just like, yeah, so we just like donated $230 to the Student Resource Center in like 10 minutes. Like no big deal. I'm like, what?
I mean, yeah, it just goes to kind of show just how great like a block can be when you just kind of come together. And honestly, I don't think, like I said, blessing in disguise, but like quarantine sort of like gave us that opportunity to become such like a neighborly block, honestly. Yeah. You've been to a couple of the stoop happy hours, like people just just get together and chat and kind of have a good time, and just try and forget all the crazy stuff that's going on. But we got we're planning a dog parade on Halloween and a little happy hour type thing, so I think it'll it's a good way to try and keep things as normal as you can during these times. But now I'm super close with like a lot of my neighbors. Yeah, like I said, blessing in disguise, honestly. But everyone on this block, like everyone that I know is just, they're so nice, everyone, and I think it just worked out that everyone just wants to give back and like make this a better, this is where we live, so we want to make this a better place than we found it.
That is so awesome. I love it. Listeners, please share what you think it means to be neighborly in your area. You can email me if you still believe in email, thisjess@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram, THISJES. Share me all of like your quarantine cooking pics or your puppy pics. I love dogs. And like being neighborly in action, that's cool. Share this podcast with your friends all over the country so they can learn about the positions and history lessons, current happenings, and maybe even be inspired to start their own informative podcast. This has been your friend Jess. Ashley, thank you so much for talking about Pennsylvania ballot question number 4. Do you know my catchphrase to lead us out?
I'll see you around the neighborhood.